You're listening to the Adventure Party for the third week of October 2024. This week, XP. Is it just brain chemicals tricking us into acting while we play our elaborate war games? Or is it more like a sauce? The Adventure Party, discussing tabletop and rare gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Eoin.
And I'm Dave. And, we could do with make a bit of progress here, like.
We could. We've also had to make progress, so as a result, we've had to leave Warlord Scarr behind.
Technical difficulties. Terrible thing.
So we've left him screaming in the middle of the road as things eat him. So, he might catch up with us at some point, or he might not. He probably will not. It's looking bad. So it's just us two today. And we're talking about progression, because we are talking about the secret sauce of RPGs. The taste that keeps us coming back every time. Character progression.
Could you elaborate on that a bit more, Owen?
Absolutely. RPGs, since the start, have always included ways to get more stuff. Be it levels, be it treasure, be it more skill points. Consistently, RPGs, especially in the early days, included that little bit of extra collectability. Your character could get stronger. He could get another level. He could get more powerful spells. He could get a better gun. He could get a bigger spaceship. He could get a louder motorcycle. And all he needed to do was play the game. Legend has it that Gygax had people randomly wandering into his house to come play D&D because they wanted that little sweet, sweet hit of dopamine you get from seeing a number on your character sheet go up and being more powerful and being able to do more stuff. And it's that element of RPGs that has been copied and taken and inserted into so many video games. Even video games where you wouldn't think there's any reason to have a leveling system. It's such a potent hook. It's such a potent reward system that almost every game now is stealing RPG elements for progression. A slightly better gun, another level, new stuff, all gated on playing the game. It is the secret sauce of RPGs, and every time I see an RPG trying to strip out their progression system, I slap my forehead and go, "What are you doing?" This is the killer app of RPGs, and you're getting rid of it. Crazy talk.
There's definitely a certain enticement to seeing numbers go up or items added, as in, ooh, we found some cool loot. Not every system uses XP, as in there are other milestones, but there's definitely changes. Like, there are a few systems where progression is extremely slow. Like, at least mechanically. Hostile, which is one of the Cepheus engine descendants of Traveller, has extremely slow skill progression because and the campaigns can take the campaigns can take years of in-game time. But as the rulebook points out, characters can still grow. They can still progress. Their relationships with each other and with NPCs can change. Their relationship with their employers, whether they're tied to one of the megacorps of the grim industrial future or are complete freelancers, those will change. Did they end up blowing up that mine to contain some ungodly xeno-horror? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think some people think that progression is often limited or the core part of leveling-based RPGs only. Well, it's really not. I've played tons of RPGs where there's no levels, there's just XP that you get and spend to improve your character. And I've played RPGs where there's very minimal amount of character progression, but there is gear progression, or there's other stuff that progresses. You get more contacts or more territory to control, or something else like that. The one I don't get, and the one I often find quite frustrating to play for an extended period of time, is an RPG where you never get any progression. And there are some like that. Star Trek 2D20 has incredibly limited character progression.
All right.
There are some games that do it incredibly slowly, like Power by the Apocalypse, you don't have a huge number of stats, and you get new abilities relatively slowly. So there's those ones there, and I often find that I'm playing them, and I get why a game designer goes into that trap. They go, oh god, players are terrible people who just break their characters. If I make it so that you can't improve your character very much, they can't break it off the base mats I've already done. Very tempting for a game designer. It's like, oh, this game can be played forever. But unless you've got progression, there's a huge appeal being missed out in your game to do that.
Yeah, it's a motivator. There's absolutely such a thing as too radical a change or too much stuff. There's a reason why the phrase Monty Hall campaigns back in the early days of D&D was not a positive phrase to describe a giveaway campaign for magic items. I believe it was a game show host reference at the time.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that was an issue. I've actually think that loot has been hugely toned down in most of the modern D&D adventures.
It absolutely has.
Yeah, and the Descendants. I mean, if I look at Pathfinder, the basic runes on weapons kind of have to be given out. You can't not give them out, really. You can delay at a level, maybe, but you can't be like, okay, you're not getting a striking rune at level 4 or level 5. And the player be like, come on, I need this. You know, my damage is dropping off a cliff because I'm not getting it. Similarly, in like 5th Ed, at a certain point, you need to be given at least a +1 weapon because there are monsters that are immune to non-magical weapons. So you need to be given something.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a campaign without where those creatures don't show up, or there are campaign-specific ways of handling them, as in only the amulet that was worn by this person in life can harm them, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. But in general terms, it's much more limited. It's not like you going in with like 50 wands strapped to your back or the huge amounts of powerful potions. It's way toned down what the gear does. And so there's a lot less juice in acquiring tons of it. And your characters don't become a lot more powerful as a result of having it. A lot of it's kind of fairly modest and can be difficult to use. I think that's a loss in some ways. That there's a lot less consumables and encouragement to use said consumables, which is a tricky thing to balance because some players will tend to hoard their gear so they never have to use it. But it's actually to encourage them to use consumables and to get consumables and then, utilize them. I see gear as an axis of development has been toned down in a lot of RPGs when it's actually quite a potent one because your characters don't necessarily need to suddenly grow more hit points. They can just buy better armor.
Yeah, like I've seen a few games where hit points or the equivalent aren't going to increase much. Actually, World of Darkness games, most of them, you're not going to get more, health levels.
No.
Well, more armor or abilities to, protect your squishiness.
You can buy Fortitude, but you can't usually buy extra health levels. Unless you're playing Exalted. Oxbody technique in Exalted is one of the few I can think of as a way to adding extra health levels to your character. And Oxbody was kind of irrelevant in Exalted, funnily enough. That wasn't what was killing you. Like, if the damage got through, you were dead. It didn't matter how many health levels you had. The trick was not getting hit. It's a real puzzler when they don't do it or they strip it out.
Yeah, I suppose you got to question what the vision is for player motivations. Is a narrative going to work without some sense of progression?
What's the
He did make it.
Oh, he did make it. Merely covered in small bites. How's it going, Warlord?
Hello. I heard someone talk about motivation and how some people, for some reason, need more than the death of their enemies to get them to the gaming table.
Absolutely. We're talking about stuff you get in RPGs, experience points that yield powerful new abilities, or treasure and loot that swell your coffers and give you a phenomenal cosmic power. And we're talking about how it's crazy that some RPGs try to discard that and get rid of kind of loot as a progression and then are left in situations where like, oh, we can only give XP to players. Oh no, players get too powerful, they get too much XP. How do I give them less XP while still motivating them? And an idea that's been stolen by the vast computer game companies to make their little gacha games ridiculously addictive. It is that progression.
I mean, having multiple types of rewards, having all those levers, that's just a toolbox. And some people really appreciate having really good toolbox. But when you're starting out, and you're a new GM or a new group, having one type of reward might just be enough. And it's not until you get a couple of games under your belt and you realize you might you like a little bit of character progression, but with a big healthy dollop of loot and a little side salad of faction gameplay, and of course some character plot development as dessert. The thing about making that kind of multi-layer reward structure, it's more to balance, isn't it? You have to balance how much emphasis each one gets and adjust it towards your players.
I think if you're going to give out rewards, in general, you encourage people to keep showing up and playing. We were talking about the early days of Gygax would have. He hit on such a secret sauce with leveling and loot that people were showing up at random hours to play the game.
Yeah.
Just thirsty for more.
And also because of his weird timekeeping thing, there was always a chance that if they didn't get to that treasure room first, that some other group would come along at 3 o'clock and badger Gygax into the game and they'd take it first.
What an incredible system.
I think one of the things, though, and the looming spectacle is, as everyone knows, we in the Adventure Party have almost as many legions of enemies piling at our door as we do loyal listeners such as yourselves. Obviously, as we try to say that XP and loot are the most important thing in a game, that hordes on hordes of ravenous story gamers will come to burn down our castle, screaming all the while that narrative satisfaction is the only reward any real role player ever needs. And
I'm not scared. I've stuck a basic maths equation to solve before you get into the house.
But I was just saying, I think the disconnect there is the getting people to stick around thing, because while there are lots of really good story-based games and all those Powered by Apocalypse games, from the big hefty hardcovers to the one-page leaflets that get sent around, they all have nice punchy premises and, well, the good ones anyway. They have punchy premises, big story ideas, and mechanics that really kind of push those and get the narrative experience you're looking for. But they don't tend to be like campaign experiences. They tend to focus on what I might call narrative loops, where if you design the thing properly, you'll get some XP and you might level up a stat or get some extra moves. But they kind of tend to focus on getting a couple of narrative arcs out of a campaign, and then the assumption is, well, those characters are done now, or some of them have gotten enough XP to retire, some of them have just died or gotten depressed or whatever and have left off, and we'll try a different PBTA or we'll start the same game again with another party. Whereas the secret sauce, as you're calling it, is the ability to get people coming back week after week for potentially years of a campaign. And I think those are the kind of warring ideas. Is like, do progression systems do best in a long-term gaming thing? And if you're looking for a short-term gaming, maybe you're focusing on one or two primary gameplay loops, whether it be XP, getting loot, or getting your narrative all the way to the end. Where's that balance? There's probably no right answer, unfortunately. But, we're not allowed to say that anymore.
The thing is, for me, is that progression stuff works for short campaigns and it works for long campaigns. I'm not convinced that, we're not doing any progression, or very limited progression, which is what some games do, is actually any advantage. I think it's good it makes it a bit easier on the designer because they do not need to balance the progression and control what happens as people level up. So they can just go, we just have to make a game that hangs together for 10 sessions and we're good. That's all most people play. I play long campaigns. I just do. And I get very frustrated at games that are fine at opening level and then 20 sessions in, I've broken the game over my knee for the crime of advancing my attack stat. I think it's really bad when people try, let's just not have it happen. No, it should happen. But you need to be able to control how it's happening and what's happening with the progression. And what's happening is you get better. And if you don't do that, you're making a rod to beat yourself with. And you're leaving a massive selling point of RPGs, the feeling of, 2 more sessions and I can buy that ability or I can get that spell. Another couple of jobs and we can get a new starship. And that's very potent. And when we don't do it, you're going, are we going for the magnificent story, the adventure? Yeah, but you want the loot as well. It's the extra little hook.
I do think that, again, I think about a year ago we had an episode, or maybe it was 2 years ago, Times of Fall Circle and all that. But we had an episode where we're discussing, should RPGs or gaming products in general be more open about what type of experience they're selling? Because, as I say, I read these, more story-based indie RPGs, and they're all very interested in it and marry mechanics with narrative beats and genre conventions very expertly. But rarely do they really come out and say, "Yeah, you should probably only play this for 10 sessions," or you should probably do this until people get to like 5 level ups and get their adult moves or whatever, or retire. They're very rarely do games admit, or maybe they don't even know how long they're good for. And without that context, I think people will tend to assume, oh, we're going to play this game every Tuesday until the end of time.
Look, I think a lot of game designers will try and take the easy way out if you let them, and they'll never admit at the same time that their game has been balanced for starter play and has not necessarily been examined at moderate or high experience levels. And they don't want to admit before you're in the door and have paid for the product that, yes, this is only really good for 10 sessions. Then, kaput. RPG players, a lot of them are, some might describe them as frugal, some might describe them as cheap, others might describe them as ludicrously cheap. I have seen the toys leave the pram over someone trying to charge €30 for a PDF. The toys all leave the pram. They want a 1,000-page hardback that will give them all the information to run a game for the rest of the time, and they want to pay 20 pence for it.
Oh, it's not an industry to make money in, for the most part.
No, it's not. We can be paying 60 for rulebooks, and we're still robbing them. They're not making money. Most of them are not making money on it. D&D makes money. Paizo makes some money. Some of the other companies make a bit of money, but for the most part, like the little guy, look,
If you're making beer money, it seems to be an achievement.
I would generally like to support those things. I do think, is it really so bad if you have a pile of PDFs as large as your pile of unread hardcovers? Because, I feel like a lot of people have those as well.
Only a fool reads every book he buys. You're meant to have unread books there for you.
It's encouragement.
Umberto Eco said that. I think he knows something about having a lot of books.
Yeah, that's fair. Going back to a previous episode, very recent one, yeah, we don't necessarily need to poo-poo someone that, again, the analogy to board games comes up. You play a €60 board game, you play it 10 times.
You're doing well.
Yeah. Why can we not use the same criteria for our indie RPGs? If we buy it for €40 and we get 2 months of gaming out of it, that's not a terribly bad investment in money.
It's actually a pretty good investment of money compared to nearly everything else.
Man, I hate to invoke the specter of ongoing developments in digital monetization, but it almost makes you wonder if people are looking for, they'd rather pay a €3 ticket for per D&D session than actually pay upfront €60. People need to examine their assumptions as it comes to expense.
Shane, or Scarr, you've run a bunch of games.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had the players offer to buy the books for you?
No, I can't say they've quite gone. I have gotten birthday gifts. I got a dice set.
Sure, but have they ever said, you know what, you're running this adventure, we're going to pay for it? Has anyone ever done that? Ever had that experience? Ever?
Not really, no.
And yet these people are crawling out to play a pro GM for the privilege? Oh, guys, I would re-examine your value here. Your friend who's run thousands of hours of content for you over years, and you're like, we'll let him keep buying the books. I wouldn't feel comfortable cutting in on that pleasure for him.
Oh, yeah, no, we...
And they're playing pro GMs. Oh, lads, come on.
I think it just doesn't occur to a lot of people. I know I've ended up chipping in for stuff for GMs before. It's not something that might immediately occur to me, but yeah.
If you were, I drove I picked you up, go to work every day for a year, would it occur at any point to go, I should really throw in a bit of money for petrol?
Well, yeah.
But no, let the GM buy that. Let the GM buy that splat book.
Unfortunately, human psychology being what it is, you should have thought to do that for the last 5 years is not something that people respond to positively. You're just sort of pointing out to them that they've been forgetting for a while. But I think we maybe gotten off topic.
Absolutely.
Where I'm getting to this is that there's nothing wrong with having a short game and having that short game have the either no progression or a very focused idea of progression, which is like maybe it's narrative only, or maybe it's just limited mechanics, or maybe it's just a little bit of gear. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to adjust that to the experience you're getting. And yeah, if you are making the next D&D killer and you're intending to sell $60, €60 hardback books, at that point, yeah, you should be putting in effort to make sure that your game has appeal systems on multiple levels and stuff like having, character progression, having ways like loot to monkey around with the character progression a little bit and be a little bit unbalanced, and narrative design to make the whole thing, satisfying as a story. These are all things to consider, but design has to pay attention to what level of game that they're designing for. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think your reward should be calibrated not to break your game because it's very easy to give people too much stuff. But at the same point in time, it's so valuable as a way to get people to come play your game and keep showing up for your game. It's like, here's all the stuff you can get. That's so good. It's so good. And it's such a great way to motivate people, and it's such a great way to keep them coming back. That feeling of little incremental progression. Every mobile phone game, every live service game uses exactly the same techniques to keep people coming back. The fear of missing out and stuff. I think we should have a serious talk about should XP only be given to people who show up for the session. I noticed that. I know people are, but that's not fair. But the FOMO drives attendance. Maybe that's the way we stick a hook in people's mouths and keep them showing up.
Maybe, but a counterexample of sorts comes to mind because, especially in games where without levels, where you just spend XP on individual like things like in the 40k RPGs or Warhammer Fantasy, what have you, people can end up piling up XP and I don't really know what to do with it. I'll just leave it, and they might spend it eventually, but it could be several sessions. So I do wonder how that fits into the picture.
I would say this is coming back to the idea of having a combination of reward factors or progression factors, we say, is that no one factor is going to grab everyone. There are some people who, even if you give them a level in once a session or give them one level up halfway through the entire 3-year campaign, they'll not notice, but they will notice every little trinket that they can fish out of some bad guy's pockets, or every hero point they get for saving an orphan. The idea that you have multiple of these progression systems or narrative engagement systems, that helps you grab a broader scope of your potential audience. And it's one of the things where, despite D&D, for example, having people are saying, oh, no, that's all about narrative now. No one worries about XP. No one worries about loot. They still have a third of the Dungeon Master's Guide dedicated to magic items and like 3 different alternate possible XP systems to adjust to your needs. They might, on the broad strokes, on the visible sense, not care about that anymore, quote unquote. But they still have it in there because they know the value of having all those different levers to pull for different people. The main issue, of course, is because they leave it entirely up to the GM to pick and choose which ones to use. A GM might default to the obvious, which would be, just throw story at them and level them up every 3 sessions. Maybe that is actually the cause of what the complaints.
Yeah, 100%. The way I look at it is it's a killer app for RPGs, and RPGs were in some ways the progenitors of it as a tool. And I think we run away with it at our peril. And there's systems where you don't have traditional experience, but you get skill improvements when you use your skills, like Call of Cthulhu, or when you train in your skills, like Traveller. But it's always there, but we could come around and get a bit more money. We could buy ourselves that new spaceship, or we could strip out some cargo space, put a larger generator in, and then we won't have to turn off our jump engines when we want to fire our lasers. which is a problem that occasionally occurs in Traveller. Oh, I didn't switch off my shields. I don't have shields, but I'm going to switch off my guns so I can jump. Do we need to jump right there? We really do. Oh, boo. Boo. So yeah, I think there's a lot there to draw people into the game a bit more. The idea of, I get some more stuff. I like stuff. Any thoughts, Dave? Any final thoughts?
I suppose if you're writing an RPG or planning a campaign, or even planning to play in a campaign, having some thoughts about progression might be the worst idea. Basically, how progression's going to work for characters. Do you expect that they're going to get lots of skills but not much gear, or the other way around? Or is it going to be more of exploring social dynamics, like, okay, I've gotten another faction on board with my master plan kind of thing?
For me, I would say don't be afraid to try out things that don't look like they're working. Spending a mini campaign figuring out whether or not XP and tracking XP is right for you can be very educational as to how it helps. I certainly know that my first Fifth Ed campaign, meticulously calculating all of the combat XP my players were getting and noticing zero changes in their behavior compared to when they were getting magic items. Very educational for me. And if you disagree with something that a progression system is doing to your gameplay, it's not wrong to change it or remove it. A game which stays at a single level or single XP level for the entire duration and is entirely focused around gaining and losing loot, falling in out of love, getting up and down with various factions, that could be perfectly fine for the kind of game you're trying to run. Don't be afraid to change it, but do recognize that every part of the buffalo works for someone. And some people do just like seeing that bar go up. And if you want to get them on board, you might want to think about having some XP progression in there as well.
If you're interested in some fantastic additional rewards that might be found by interacting with this podcast, why not come along and poke us on our social media, see if there's any XP falls out, or if we're carrying any good loot on our Discord. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to the Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there or talk to our Twitter account at AdventuringPTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.